Today we're going to talk about how to make your ex-boyfriend miss you. And if you stick around until the end of this video, not only are we going to show you the different techniques that we teach our clients to help them make their exes miss them, but you're also going to learn a little bit about the psychology behind why exes can miss you. But first things first, if you haven't already, make sure you stop everything you're doing and take my Ex Recovery Chances quiz on my website, www.exboyfriend.com. It's a simple 2-minute quiz designed to basically tell you what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back. And it's a quiz that we've had in existence for quite a long time, and it still continues to help people every single day. So all you have to do if you want to take the quiz is simply look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on it. It will take you to a link that takes you to the quiz where you can basically find out what your overall chances are of success, so you know you're not wasting your time. Okay, with that out of the way, let's just begin and dive right into the material. So I started my business back in 2012. So it's been almost about a decade since I've been working with people one-on-one. And I kind of have the unfair advantage of working with thousands of different individuals so that I can see kind of what's working and what's not working, especially when it comes to what makes exes miss you. And what I tend to see with a lot of my newer clients is what I like to call the magic bullet mentality. Now, what is the magic bullet mentality? Well, it's basically where you get broken up with by your ex-boyfriend, you go to Google, you maybe type in something like, hey, how do I get my ex-boyfriend to miss me and beg for me back? And then you end up finding this random article from someone who's too afraid to show their face or really put some effort into the article, where they basically teach you this strategy to make your ex miss you if you do these 3 things, or if you do these 5 things. And you usually get it in your head that all it will take is just you doing one of those things, this one magic bullet thing to make your ex-boyfriend miss you. And what I found to be the case is that's entirely untrue. Instead, what usually happens to make an ex-boyfriend miss you is something I like to call the confluence of events, or the confluence strategy. So rather than just focusing on one specific thing to say or do to make an ex miss you, realize that it's not just one singular thing that's going to make the difference. It's going to be you focusing on all of the strategy, of all of the individual things that you think or we have found to help make an ex miss you. And while you may be able to say like, hey, this one thing had more of an impact than these other things, you can't basically say the other things didn't help you. Instead, usually what happens, it's a combination of all of the different strategies that I'm going to be talking about today. But before we start talking about the strategies behind what makes exes miss you, I think it's first important for you to understand the psychology of why exes can miss you. So if you really sit back and think about it, making an ex miss you is essentially about creating enough regret for them to miss any of the routines that you used to have, any of the sexual experiences that you used to have, or basically just being around you or just talking to you on this daily basis. Really, missing is kind of synonymous with regret. So ultimately, the best way to approach getting an ex-boyfriend to miss you is to look at the psychology behind what makes human beings regret breakups. That's where it's really handy to have lots of different success stories. Now, I'm sure you've heard me talk about this a lot, but basically anyone who buys my program or does coaching with me or one of my coaches will get access to this private Facebook support group. And in this private Facebook support group, it's basically us coming in, helping people or other people helping each other, which is kind of the best thing. What's kind of cool is you get to see lots of different success stories happen in front of your eyes. And usually what happens is when one of those success stories is successful in winning their ex back, I like to talk to them because I want to understand not what they followed, but what they didn't follow. And what I mean by that is we've learned a lot about what works to make exes miss you and want to come back, but what we haven't learned are maybe some of the things that aren't within our strategy. So I'm always happy to hear people who followed our strategy and seen success, but what I'm really looking for are those people who tried to follow our strategy, but maybe did something a little bit different than the norm. And what's really interesting is those kind of people are teaching us about what's really working and what we can improve on. And personally speaking, I find it ridiculous for anyone to be advising a mass amount of people who are trying to win an X-Pack or trying to make a decision whether or not they should be trying to get an X-Pack if you're not actually talking with people who are successful. Because I'm telling you, by sitting down for an hour, just having a really open discussion about what they did that worked and hearing their story and hearing about their circumstances, you learn a lot that you usually can't pick up in just a 2,000 word article, for an example. So what's really interesting is when I sat down with success stories and started interviewing them, and you can just go to my YouTube channel and literally look for the success story playlist and see all of the ones that we've had the opportunity to interview. And usually these interviews are anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour, and they're usually very helpful. But what's really interesting is I've learned a lot about what makes exes regret and ultimately want to come back and miss you. So if we're being honest, there are literally hundreds of factors behind what will make someone regret a decision to break up with you, make someone miss you, or even make someone want to come back with you. But ultimately, we don't have a lot of time to sit here and say like, hey, here's the top 100 things. But what we have noticed is a pattern of 3 very specific things that you can do to dramatically improve the odds of making your ex miss you. And I want you to keep in mind that just doing one of these things isn't sufficient. All 3 of these things need to be used synonymously. Essentially, you need to be doing them all at the same time, and there's kind of this really interesting symbiotic relationship between them. So what are these 3 things? Well, thing number 1 is essentially time. Now, we have this built into our overall strategy when we tell people to use a no contact rule, but what we're not really telling you is why you should use the no contact rule. Now, of course, I cover some of the whys in the no contact rule videos and articles and podcast episodes that I do, but what we're not telling you is from a missing perspective, it's really important. And probably the best way that I can make this point clear to you is by looking at success stories. Each one of our success stories implemented a specific type of no contact rule. Now, what's interesting is the time varies from situation to situation. For some people, they can stay in no contact or on and off no contact for as much as 2 years. For others, they can't stay apart for maybe more than 14 days. But time is an essential piece to this puzzle. And I think the number 1 mistake people make when they go through a breakup is they don't want to give their ex any time. They're so eager to fix the problem as soon as possible, to put a band-aid over it, that they forget that maybe one of the best things they can do is give their ex time to just kind of chill out. But there's also a hidden element to time. What I've learned from speaking with lots of success stories isn't the fact that, hey, I'm just gonna give my ex a bunch of time to cool off and start to miss me. Absence does make the heart grow fonder after all, but it's what you use your time for. If you're just gonna sit around and not do anything productive with the time that you're giving your ex to kind of chill out, you're missing a huge opportunity. And what's consistent in these success story interviews that I do isn't the fact that they're giving their exes time to miss them, but it's the fact that they're using that time to improve themselves in some way, shape, or form, so that change occurs. So personally, I think this is at the forefront of my mind right now, this change concept with time, because I had the opportunity this morning to interview a lovely woman from Australia who got her ex back after implementing a 45-day no contact rule. And the big thing that I learned from her situation wasn't the fact that she spent a longer time in no contact, but it was the fact that she didn't really start seeing success until she actually did something to improve her life. So she had credit card debt, right? So she made it a point during that no contact period to pay off that credit card debt, or at least half it. And what's really interesting is when she ended up getting her ex back, her ex just kept complimenting her on, wow, you've changed, you're so different than you were before. So I think what you use your time for is an interesting element that is often overlooked. Thing number 2 is really not caring. And perhaps this is going to be the biggest shocker out of this entire list, but like I said, I've been interviewing lots of success stories, and I personally think you can learn so much just by sitting down and listening to the 20 hours of success story interviews we have up for free on the YouTube channel, because you're going to learn a lot about what works, what doesn't work, and some of the trends we're noticing. And really the big trend we're noticing is the mentality people have after a no contact rule. And I notice this a lot because I see a lot of what happens with failures. And what I mean by that is we have about 4,500 people in our Facebook group right now. We have not had 4,500 successes. Now, we have had lots of different successes. We've been able to get in touch. We've been able to do these interviews. We've been able to post those interviews up on YouTube for you to see for free, which is super cool. But what we don't show you are the failures. And here's the truth. The failures will do the no contact rule. They won't make any internal or external change. And then they'll just feel sorry for themselves when things don't go well for them. And really, they care too much about getting their ex back. And I think kind of the point of a no contact rule should be getting you to a headspace where you don't care about getting your ex back anymore. Because that was a pattern we noticed in our interviews. People who literally go through this no contact period, who change externally and internally, not necessarily their personalities, but there's just some different swagger about them. They don't really care about getting their ex back anymore, and that frustrates their exes to the point where their exes start being the ones who's approaching them, trying to get the dates. So how do you have this mindset shift where you want your ex back so desperately, but all of a sudden you don't care? Truthfully, the only way to do that, I think, is to find something that you can prioritize above your ex. No, I can go on and on and on about this topic because it's something that I am personally passionate about, but I'm not going to do it justice, so here's my best piece of advice to you. A few weeks ago, I did this video called Letting Go of Your Ex May Be the Key to Getting Them Back on YouTube. Watch that video from start to finish. That is the ultimate blueprint / game plan to getting this mentality. And remember, this mentality, while you're not going to see any kind of beneficial sort of like action, it's more of an internal mindset you need to have. It's something you absolutely need to do because remember, confluence of events. And then finally, thing number 3 is fear of loss. Okay, it's a basic rule of scarcity. Think of it like this. Black Friday is one of the biggest sales holidays of the year. The day after Thanksgiving is Friday, right? And everyone goes crazy trying to get the good deals. Why? Well, it's not because they want this thing right now. It's because they want it right now because it's going to be the cheapest it can possibly be. They're afraid of losing out on the deal. The same principle applies to you and your ex-boyfriend. And a lot of times people don't really understand me when I tell them go on dates with other guys or girls during your no contact rule. And they think, well, I don't want to do that. I don't feel like doing that. I feel like I'm gonna be leading someone on. And they're saying that, and I totally get where they're coming from, but at the same time, they're robbing themselves of the chance to create this fear of loss. I can't tell you how often women come to me after they've gotten their exes back, and they say, I struggle so much because after we broke up, he started dating some other girl, and he slept with this other girl, and I just can't get over that. And I guess my point is, he's doing what you should have done to him. You are a free agent. You can go out, you can date, even if you don't fall in love with the guy you're on a date with or the girl you're on a date with, use it as practice. Get really good at connecting with individuals. And also understand or exhibit that you're not gonna just wait around for your ex-boyfriend to wise up. You could be taken up or you could be taken off the market. And I think that is what people fail to do. They're so heartbroken, they kind of don't pick themselves up off the ground and try to just do something even if their heart's not in it. And sometimes all it's about is just creating momentum, feeling wanted by someone else. Now, I'm not in the business of telling people to use the dates, but in a weird way, it can help you get over the breakup to feel wanted by another guy. And it also has the added benefit of showing your ex-boyfriend you're dating and you're not gonna wait around forever for him. And it also, think of the narrative. You got broken up with by your ex-boyfriend, at least the vast majority of you have. That's why you're at this video. Your ex-boyfriend is under the assumption that you want him more than he wants you. This is the narrative he plays in his head, whether you realize it or not. Even if you felt you had something special with your ex-boyfriend, and usually everyone who comes to me does, he always has this sort of added confidence that he's better than you. And that narrative changes the second he realizes he doesn't have you as much as he thought. Some other guy can take you off the market, and then he'll go crazy. And before you turn this off and realize or argue with me, How often have you literally moved on to someone else and years later had an ex reach out to you asking for you back? Because what I'm recommending here is essentially the same thing, just in a much more sped up version. And it's a little bit more hard emotionally on you, but I would argue it's the best thing to create the fear of loss. Hey there, thanks so much for getting to the end of this video. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you take the quiz that I was talking about at the beginning of the video. It's really easy. All you have to do is simply look in the description link below the YouTube video and click the blue link you see there. That's it. Also, if you haven't liked, commented, or subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. Every little bit helps. I'll see you next time.